The overall idea for this podcast is to strengthen parents and students' transitional experiences in the school to college. Remembering who you are and accepting your identity matters, especially during this transition. And every transition is unique and needs personal guidance. Let's get ready to listen to unique stories created by Kailey Ayisi during her transitional experiences from kindergarten through grade school and now through college. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me, Kailey. My name is Dr. Kailey Ayisi, and I would like to hear your experiences as you have transitioned through high school, through college now, especially in your mathematics education. So at any point in time of this interview, if you feel like you don't want to continue this anymore, feel free to let me know. What year are you in college right now?
I am a sophomore in my fall semester.
Did you transfer some credits in college from high school?
So my high school, or my college rather, doesn't really do too many credit transfers, like AP credits. So for the most part, you test into classes that you plan to go into, and then you take those credits just so that they know that everybody has the same kind of general standard of education.
Okay. Did you participate in like AP or CCP or like honors courses?
I did all three. In terms of, I took majority honors classes throughout high school. And I took 2 or 3 CCPs. And then in terms of APs, I took probably about 6, I would say.
What are the courses? What are these courses that you took?
So I took AP literature, AP language. I took, in terms of CCP, I took CCP government and CCP writing. And then I also took AP calculus, AP statistics, and then AP macro and microeconomics, and AP chemistry.
Okay. So can you help me understand like what your high school was like? Like how big it was, how many students in there, like things like that.
Yeah, my high school was about 1,100 students. My graduating class was 450 students about. So it was a decently sized high school for, at least for the area that I lived in. Yeah, it was a pretty standard Ohio high school. There in terms of like academics and like kind of the way I'm very grateful to have even had the opportunities that I had to take all the classes that were offered at my school, because I know some schools don't really have that option. So I was really grateful to have those opportunities to take courses that challenged me. But yes, there was a pretty even split between kids who kind of participated in more so honors and APs, and kids who didn't. I think most people, I would say, ended up taking at least one honors, CCP, or AP course in their time during my high school.
Okay. Was your high school well funded?
I would say kind of in the middle there. I think that my school also has a sister school. I think the funds between the two schools were pretty evenly split. We weren't the wealthiest of schools. There were definitely schools in our area who definitely had some more funds than we, but for the most part, the necessities that we had were met.
Okay. What kind of mathematics curriculum did your high school have?
Yeah, so in terms of the standards for graduating, my high school required Algebra 1. It required geometry. It required Algebra 2 and then pre-calculus. And then those were the 4 classes that you had to take. So it was kind of meant to be freshman through senior year. I had a little bit of a different experience with with the timing of my classes, in that I went to a fast track school in middle school, so fifth and sixth grade. So I ended up taking my algebra
Mm-hmm.
in the seventh grade.
This is
So
algebra
I took
one.
algebra, yes, algebra one in the
Okay.
seventh grade, with a mixture of, in a class that was kind of a mixture of seventh graders. We were called Gateway Kids because that was the name of the fast track program.
Okay.
So I took it in seventh grade, mix of seventh and eighth graders, and then took geometry in eighth grade. And then when I got to high school, finally, I took algebra one or algebra two as my first math course. And then I ended up taking pre-calc my sophomore year. So kind of during COVID, so it was kind of a different experience in that. But after that, I kind of had my pick of the draw with math courses. So I kind of wanted to make sure I got some experience in every kind of dimension of math. So I took AP Calculus my junior year, kind of during a hybrid. My school did hybrid school, so some time was spent in school, some time spent online, online learning. And then my senior year, my schedule didn't really work out for me to take Calculus BC,
Okay.
AP Calculus BC. So I ended up taking statistics instead,
Mm-hmm.
AP statistics, just to kind of make sure that I had kind of a broad knowledge of math as a whole, because I knew I planned to be pre-med when I came to college. So I knew that at some point I was going to be required to take a statistics course. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of had that foundation in it, at least so it wouldn't be the first time that I was seeing it.
Can you tell me about your experiences of being in a level, some people call it like a track system, as a Black student?
Yeah, so I think that, well, in terms of the track, at least early on, so more so the fifth and sixth grade kind of year, I was in the first class of people that ever actually went through fifth and sixth. So I started the fifth grade. So the first class of people that did it were for my class. There's fourth, fifth, and sixth. And so my first year, the first year of the program, I was in fifth grade, and there were, out of maybe 60 students, I would say that there were maybe 5 Black students, I would say. So definitely kind of in the minority there. There were other people of color definitely in that program, but I think the majority white students. In terms of my sixth grade year, more people came in that year. So people could join at any point in the program. So I went through fifth and sixth, but then more people came in the sixth grade. So there were definitely like a bigger integration of people of color that in that second wave of people that came. Whether or not that was intentional, I'm not sure. But there definitely was a larger population of people of color students, specifically Black students. So and I actually met some of my closest friends through that. And all 5 of us are Black students, which is really nice to have that community in that. Going into high school, kind of, there were still that kind of core group of like mostly white students, but as we kind of progressed through high school, more and more people kind of started taking the same level classes we were taking. And so more and more people of color got integrated, and then that community became even wider, which again, I really appreciated, because a lot of times you don't get to see people of color, people who look like you in those kind of positions. So to be kind of not only a member of that community, but also kind of one of the people who was there from the start and kind of saw how it grew and how it became more diverse, was really an incredible experience for me.
Okay. Can you tell me about your major, or what you are thinking about majoring in?
Yes. So currently I have plans of going to medical school. So I am a neuroscience major with a minor in healthcare management. I'm still deciding whether or not I would like to have another major. That's still kind of on the rocks there. But so I'm a neuroscience major with the minor in healthcare management. I'm also a Benjamin Franklin Scholar, which requires some extra coursework. So there's that as well. And I'm also a pre-med, as I mentioned before.
Can you share with me what led to your interests in these areas and why you chose to be in the STEM major?
Yeah, so from a young age, honestly, I've science has always been my passion. I loved all my science classes growing up. I loved experimenting. I would be at home mixing chemicals, not chemicals, like mixing like different things, making my mom upset with me. And also, I think that part of like what kind of led me to want to go into medicine is my parents, my mom specifically. My mom was a nurse when I was growing up, so always seeing her kind of in that position, like I always admired her for that, and that really, I would say, definitely influenced my kind of interest in that. Um, and then my parents also own a home health care agency, which kind of led to, and my dad also worked in business prior to kind of working in that space. So that kind of like, I kind of think of myself as like the perfect blend of my parents, kind of the medicine side and the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and So yeah, so kind of blending those two together because business had also kind of always been a thing that I wanted to do as well. My dad and I would always talk shop more so than me and my other siblings. He always kind of he always told me like if you didn't want to go into medicine, I would pin you as a business person for sure. So kind of blending those kind of two identities within me. And then as for neuroscience specifically, I was fortunate. My school, we were fortunate enough to have kind of a medicine program at our school.
Yeah.
And so during my second year of that course, it's called it's done through Project Lead the Way. It's called Principles of Biomedical Science. And so during my second year in that one called Human Body Systems, we got the opportunity to dissect a brain, and we did a whole unit on the brain, and it was by far my favorite unit we did that year. I found the just the intricacies of the brain just so fascinating, and then also kind of the fact that like we these things just kind of exist within us, and we don't know that much about them, but they control our every emotion or every action, just everything that we do controls the way we relate to people, which I just found that really so fascinating. So ever since that moment, it kind of been solidified for me that I wanted to go into kind of neuroscience as well.
Mm. Now, tell me about yourself as a mathematics student.
Yeah, so I think people typically think when one is kind of a science lover, as I claim to be, that math kind of pairs well with that. But I, especially like at a really young age, I never really thought of myself that way. Math was definitely not my favorite subject. I was always happy to get down with science, but math just was never my favorite. I definitely from a young age I knew that, and it didn't come my brain. I didn't like think in that way, so I definitely had to. From a young age, I realized that I would have to take some extra steps in kind of learning math because I had a kind of deep desire to kind of understand the function behind it. Whereas some people could just crank out the problems. I wanted to understand why. I wanted to just understand how and have a deep understanding so that I could go on to further apply that. So I always kind of took those extra steps in math just as a student throughout my entire career with math.
Now, is mathematics part of your identity as a student or even as a learner?
I think that math is definitely, I feel like math kind of has to be part of everybody's identity as a student. But me specifically, again, a lot of what I deal with is kind of numbers and data, and like because in science, you know, you're dealing with data, you're dealing with how, and even with neuroscience, you're dealing with how people think and how do you get that data. All that data is quantitative,
Right.
and so you're constantly analyzing data. You're constantly wondering how many people think this way, how many people act this way, what percent of the brain does this, and kind of it's all kind of calculation. So as a person who is obviously interested in those things, and also just interested in the way like the human condition is and just kind of how people function in society, numbers are such a big important part of that. And so knowing math, being well versed in math has always been a very important part of my identity.
And then looking back, do you like to contribute in your math class? Why or why not?
Yeah, so definitely, I think one of my bigger accomplishments to date, or one really personal accomplishment to me, is kind of speaking up more, like being more confident in kind of math answers. I know when I was a lot younger,
Mm-hmm.
I found it, I was there, I would often have the right answer, but never be sure completely about whether or not I had done it correctly. Everyone else, I like to, especially like when I got to algebra and started doing more kind of function-based maths, I would really take my time with problems. I would make sure every individual step I was very meticulous in the way that I did my math, whereas some people just kind of go through and do it faster. So I wouldn't always be the fastest to finish my math problems, but I would get them right. And I would be, that kind of like the pace of that kind of set me off and kind of made me feel like, oh, is this answer right? So kind of speaking up in math class was always a little difficult for me because I would always have that internal debate of, is this right? Did I get this right? Everyone else got it before me, so maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was confused. But more recently, I've gotten better about speaking up in classes. I think I've kind of learned to take my meticulousness as not like as a constraint, but rather as kind of that extra carefulness, that extra step I take to make sure that my work is right as kind of a strength. So I feel more confident in my work, and I've kind of taken that and just turned it into confidence,
Right.
and realized that like that the fact that I take more time and put that kind of care into my work makes it more likely, at least for me, that the work is right. Because I've made sure not to make any like silly mistakes or things like that. So
Help me understand how you perceive your learning of mathematics.
As I mentioned earlier, I've always had this kind of love-hate relationship with math, and I'm growing more to the love side as I grow up. But I think that my relationship with math, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the question. Could you repeat it for me?
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, how you perceive your learning of mathematics.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
No, you?
So I have always kind of been a hands-on learner.
Okay.
And so where some people needed, and as I mentioned before, I also have like an almost insatiable desire to kind of understand how math kind of works behind the math. So rather than just do a function, figure out a function, I want to figure out why we're doing this, what the meaning of this is, what the application is in real life, because I'm always thinking ahead, and as a science person, I want to know like the application of things. So how I perceive my learning of math, kind of, as I mentioned before, I take a more meticulous approach, and I kind of take a thorough approach. So I kind of I have to make sure that I understand the fundamentals of the math, how this math kind of came to be, what purpose it really serves, and things like that. I make sure. I think especially with I think my favorite kind of math, I think, is statistics, as I mentioned before, and I think that it's especially my favorite because it kind of scratches all those itches about like kind of wanting to know the purpose of things, seeing the application, and it kind of blends in that my love for like understanding people and how they work. So, and also I think statistics kind of takes a different approach to math than like your typical function-based math, like calculus or geometry things do.
Yeah.
So I think that statistics kind of sums up my way of learning math in a kind of perfect way.
What opportunities were you introduced to in high school? I know you mentioned some.
Yeah, in terms of mathematics or just in general?
In general.
Yeah, so I had a pretty busy high school career. Off the top of my head, some meaningful ones were I was involved in student government at my school, which I found really meaningful because I got to, especially as somebody who's like a person of color and like doesn't always get the opportunity for her, and a woman who doesn't always get the opportunity for her voice to be heard. I felt like I had the opportunity to kind of be a voice for people who either weren't or didn't feel like they were being heard, and kind of change the school to make it a better place for everybody to exist in. I also had the opportunity to participate in Girls State for my school and represent them. Girls State, if viewers don't know, is a program where basically you go away for a week, stay at a college campus, to kind of get a college experience like that in that way, and then you kind of run a makeshift government. Everybody has jobs. Everybody there's a president. There's a governor. There's everything. There's law, all of that. So every aspect of like a functional government is covered, and everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a job to go to. And so, yeah, that was a super fun experience for me. I wasn't particularly interested in government and things like that, but I had one of the best times of my life. I met amazing people. It was just so, because there are things, and as I mentioned again with math, I like to know the behind, what happens behind the scenes, and it's kind of like to understand how government works from the side of things that you don't really necessarily see was so interesting. And other opportunities I had in school. As I mentioned, I was in this medical program, Project Lead the Way, Principles of Biomedical Science. That had to be probably my favorite class I took all of high school. The 4 years, you take it all 4 years of high school. Some people to double up, but I took them all 4 years of high school. And every year is different. My favorite year was the last year, which is always what everybody looks forward to. Basically, your class actually doesn't take place in your high school at all. For our school, there's a hospital campus nearby, and our class takes place there. So we have our own room and everything, and it's called Biomedical Innovations. So you learn about some medicine, but you also kind of learn about how people are working to kind of fix these problems in medicine and we talk about structural issues in like the actual system of healthcare. And then you also talk about like physical issues and how people have innovated things to kind of help cure those. And we also got unique opportunities to shadow people in the hospital, which was also very, very interesting. We shadowed people from all different parts of it. We said there was secretary shadowing. You also got to shadow the phlebotomist, even shadow the storage workers, the people who kind of bring in the medicine and bring in all the things that you use to help a hospital function, which was important to me personally because, again, like nobody ever really thinks about all the things that go into making a hospital run efficiently. And quickly, people always think, doctors, nurses, but there's also people who work at the front desk, people who do triaging. Like all of that is so important, and people don't necessarily realize that. And so that kind of also kind of solidified my love for healthcare management as well. Just kind of understanding the working, moving pieces of a hospital, how they come together and blend, and how important each and every part is.
Okay, were you comfortable with these opportunities?
For the most part, I think some of them, again, especially with Girls State, so we each had like little towns or groups that we had, and my group, I was the only Black student there, and I think the entire makeup of most of that cohort that went was mostly white, and that, it's a little bit difficult being a person of color in a space like that. Sometimes you kind of feel like you don't belong, or like what am I doing here? Like there are people I'd probably get who probably would identify with me a lot more back home. Like, is this really an opportunity I want to take? So it's kind of hard sometimes to get out of your own way and like just experience opportunities for what they are. I also think that it requires sometimes kind of a mind shift. When I was at Girls State, and thinking back about the people that I know personally who have gone, I think that they also kind of matched the demographic of the entire place. But I thought that I kind of tried to shift my mind and be like, okay, well, if I show them just how good I can be here, how much I can succeed, how much I can contribute, I could possibly be helping, pave the way for other students who look like me, who want to come here, because I can show them that, we can do it, and we are just as smart, just as capable, and just as necessary to help kind of things like this function.
How did you get involved with school activities?
So, in terms of, okay, well, so a lot of it, I think, at least for high school, was word of mouth. I also, I brother went to the school, so I knew about some things that he had done before and that he said were enjoyable, and then he had friends who had done things, so I knew about some of those. Some opportunities, I kind of just, I suck out, I suck out my, I seeked out myself. I think it takes, it's a big step to kind of put yourself out there and look for an opportunity that kind of, especially with having like an older brother at the school,
Okay.
I didn't want to be kind of following in his footsteps, doing every single thing he did. Some of our extracurriculars overlapped for sure, but I also wanted to have my own individual, unique, personal high school experience. So kind of deviating from whatever standard had been set in my own household, and kind of finding things that interested me alone, and that aligned with my interests, and also just kind of making sure that I kind of had one or two extracurriculars that were pushing me out of my comfort zone in a different way. I think that kind of putting yourself in situations that aren't always comfortable is one of the easiest ways to help yourself grow. And at very least, if you don't grow, then you learn something and you do better the next time. So yeah, I think kind of sorting them out that way and just kind of putting yourself out there is just the biggest step. Getting, as I mentioned before, kind of getting out of your own way, and making sure that you're using your time in a way that you enjoy, but also like experiencing high school in the best way that you can.
What activities do you think were missing?
Sorry, could you repeat that again a little bit?
What activities do you think were missing?
From my high school?
Yeah.
Or from my experience?
From your high school?
Yeah, so on campus, I'm involved with a number of cultural groups. And so my school had a couple, less than, there was a production we had Black History Month production, which was a big thing. It happened, the performance was in February, which is obviously Black History Month. And the preparation for that was kind of started in maybe October, September, sometime in the fall. And you kind of rehearsed throughout the months leading up to February. But other than that, there weren't really that many like established cultural groups, which I found kind of lacking. I found community in other ways, like people who identify. So I found community, like Black people with African students in different ways, but there was no really established way to kind of meet people like that. Now, I also have a younger sister who attends the high school. To my knowledge, there is now a BSU there, a Black Student Union, which is good. Steps being made in the right direction. I don't know about other cultural groups or racial groups, but I think that would have been really beneficial, just because every student goes through high school a different way. And every Black student goes through high school a different way as well. But I think that having people who understand who are happy to listen to kind of how your experience differs from their, but also kind of being able to have that conversation about how yours are similar in the fact that you are, together in this kind of racial identity. Yeah. Is important, and also just is another community who understands you that you can fall back on, because community in high school and college and life really is everything. They're the people you fall back on, the people who support you when you need it, the people you find joy in when you have times of maybe some unhappiness, some unpleasantness. So I think that those people are really important to have. So I think having cultural groups in my high school would have made my high school experience just that much better.
And then what barriers prevented you from accessing mathematics opportunities?
Yeah, so I was also involved in the marching band at my school. And so, as I mentioned before, I didn't take Calculus BC. I would have loved to. My teacher for calculus AB is the same one for BC, and she's an incredible teacher. And she taught calculus in a way that I really, really understood. So I found, so, I was planning on doing it, but I was also in the marching band, as I mentioned, and that kind of took up a big section of my day because we had in school rehearsal as well, like during the school day. And then we also, because we had rehearsal together, we were set on a kind of weird lunch schedule. And so during this like block that they have sectioned off for band kids, was when calc was, and I was a section leader at the time. I was a senior. And so I was the leader of my section. And so my band director wasn't really okay with me not being at every single, like, because I would have missed, so we have like multiple rehearsals, out of school rehearsals and in-school rehearsals, and he wasn't okay with me missing 5 rehearsals every week and only coming to outside of rehearsals, kind of to not, so that I could take calc. So I wasn't able to kind of access that math. And, kind of currently I am kind of experiencing kind of the effects of that because my school only offers 1,300 and 1,400, which are A, B, and BC. And the math at my school is historically very, very difficult. Our math and chem departments are with students typically struggle in those classes. And so, and being the major that I am, we don't have much space in our schedule kind of for, kind of to be like using time where we don't need it. So I decided to go straight to 1,400. I'm taking that next semester. So go straight to BC when I haven't taken calculus for a while since junior year. So I'm kind of reeling from the effects of that, kind of having to go into this difficult math. Not having that, even some students at my school who have taken BC still struggle in that 1,400 class.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not sure, just because the way it's formatted, or I'm not sure what happens. But so kind of knowing that, having that background of knowing that people struggle in that class typically, and knowing that I don't have that background that other people have, I know that I'm going to have to work 2, if not 3 times harder to succeed in that class. So that's kind of a worry as of like currently. But yeah, I think that was kind of a barrier to my calculus experience. Yeah.
Can you describe a point in your schooling, let's say like a time when you were most engaged and alive in your math education?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, statistics was my favorite math. I also did enjoy calculus a lot. I thought that the math of it was very, especially because I kind of had a negative tone set for it. When I took pre-calculus, I found pre-calculus to be the hardest math that I took during high school and junior high. Just because it kind of is like, in my mind, it's kind of like just at my school, I'm not sure how other schools kind of are, but in my school, it's kind of just a mix of everything thrown together that didn't really fit into other maths. Wasn't quite calculus, but like was kind of some calculus, just kind of a bunch of things that didn't fit too well, in my opinion, kind of thrown together and then just kind of shoved at you. So it was kind of hard to kind of get my mind around that. So it was definitely the hardest math class for me, but calculus, I really enjoyed. I thought the math of it was kind of straightforward, made sense. And my teacher was really, really good, as I mentioned. And then, excuse me, in terms of statistics, like I said, one of my favorite types of math, who really put an emphasis on, and you don't get this as much as in college. I just took statistics last semester, and you don't really get this as much in college, but I think the AP statistics curriculum is formulated in a way that everything moves smoothly and you kind of learn things in the way that they're supposed to be learned. So everything kind of tells a story and the things that you use kind of build on each other. And my stats teacher, she did a really, really good job of ensuring that we like understood as I keep mentioning, the foundation of math. Like she would take an entire day just to explain to us like what this t-test is and why we're doing it, what function it has, how it operates in the real world, how this fits in with the other kind of types of tests that we have, and how, yeah, where it kind of places in there. And like, then we would kind of go into a day of learning how to do it. Then we go into a day of kind of application. And then she would also kind of routinely bring up these old tests that we hadn't done in maybe a couple of weeks or a month even, just to make sure it was kind of refreshed in our brains for the AP test and things like that.
What helpful and or positive experiences did you have in mathematics education growing up?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I went to a kind of fast track school for math. And prior to that, I was involved in kind of what we would call kind of math plus, except in my school at the time that I was there, it was kind of math, English, and kind of science all thrown together. So we kind of would leave class, things like that. But I think my school also did kind of a good job of kind of taking the children who were kind of showing signs of being like a bit like quicker at picking up math and things like that, kind of removing them from the normal class situation, because the things that we would learn when I was in those kind of different rooms, they taught math and everything else they taught in a different way. They made a point to make it, first of all, engaging. They play, at the time this really appealed to me. They played games and you wouldn't realize you were learning math until you like sat down and realized like, oh, I can do this. And we played a game in class that had everything to do with this. So they utilized I think that once they took those students in, like when I went to the Gateway program, when they took those students away, they kind of had the freedom to kind of teach in a different way and teach in a way. They had the freedom to kind of get creative with their structure and teach things. So an example that I'm thinking of right now, in the 6th grade, we were learning, it wasn't 6th grade, I can't remember what grade it was, but we were learning about like 3D shapes. And rather than, showing us like, oh, this is a cube, this is a sphere, and like when we were learning the formulas as well, instead of that, they gave us papers, they had us build 3D structures, with all of these shapes. We had like requirements we had to meet and like build a scene or whatever. And then we had like a day where we like voted on all of them. The winners got prizes, whatever. And so kind of, you didn't realize you were learning that. So we like learn foundations in class, and then we would go on to like apply it and really put it into play. So that, first of all, that appeals to I think it's my hands-on kind of learning style. And then also kind of that creative aspect of me that kind of wanted to know the how, I wanted to kind of like apply things. So I think that learning in that way through most of my education, and even if not, like once I got to like different harder types of math, kind of knowing myself and knowing that I learn well that way and kind of applying that to myself. So kind of trying to look at things from a different angle, learning that at a young age, learning to look at math and different things at a different angle, so I could understand it, and not only understand it, but be able to apply it further than what was like expected of me, was really a crucial lesson that I learned growing up. So that really helped and contributed to my learning of math throughout the years.
So as a Black student, how do you approach college mathematics education?
Yeah, so I think that I just think that at every step I really have had good opportunities, whether or not I went out for them myself, or they kind of were just kind of appeared kind of in my view. But I was lucky enough before I even got to college to go to a summer institute for Africana studies. It was really the first interaction I had with my school at all, other than like touring it a few years back when my brother was looking for colleges. I went to the summer institute. It was a group of mainly Black students, where we had the opportunity to take 2 courses over the course of a week. And just get a feel in a kind of low stakes. The classes were rigorous, don't get me wrong, but kind of lower stakes environment to kind of experience what college was like and get a taste for college before we even got there. And it was pass fail too, so it was kind of really a lot lower stakes. And just also kind of get familiar with the campus. kind of try to establish some learning skills, because there was also a lot. It also kind of they also kind of worked to solidify reading skills, which is very important in college. But also building a community of Black students who were on campus, who I knew, who I could rely on, and things like that. Because I was in that program they offer, again, as I mentioned before, most of the freshman students in my class or at my school have to take for math 1400, math 1300. Usually people get it out of the way their first year. I personally I didn't. I wanted to kind of explore, but because of that program, they have this thing put in place for only Black students and only members of the Africana Institute, where so in our math department there are at any school really, at any level, there are those teachers that everybody, people don't really like. People think, oh, this person grades hard, this person teaches badly. And then there are, of course, those teachers that everybody loves, and they're like, oh, this teacher is so great, he helped me with this and that. So kind of those kind of teachers, the teachers that everyone loves and everybody kind of dislikes. So one of the teachers who happens to be pretty much one of the more redeemable ones of the department, he happens to be Black. And so during the week, the Africana, they have him come in and give a speech to the students just so they can put a name to the face, because everybody will say, like, this teacher is really good. And then throughout the entire year, he offers to only Africana students study tables every week, exclusively for them, because he also teaches, even if they're not in his class, he still teaches the courses. He knows what they're doing, so he gives them personal one-on-one help in a group setting, but like between one-on-one. So he offers those every week for only Africana students. And so what I'm doing currently, as someone who hasn't taken done a function-based math in a long time, specifically calculus, in maybe 3-4 years. I'm going to I'm doing his math tables now, so I'm going there and I'm getting like one-on-one help from him to kind of help see the material for 1400 before I even take it, just so I get more familiar with it. So that opportunity wouldn't have come to me if I wasn't Black, if I didn't put myself out there and go to this institute and get this unique opportunity. And so I think that a really big thing about being a Black student in a university, especially in one where math is, and there are subjects, math, chemistry, things like that are specifically difficult, is finding those mentors, especially Black mentors, because a lot of times Black professors, Black people in high places or whatever, they want to help Black students. They want to see Black students do well. And so if you take that first step, you reach out to them, you ask for help, you let them know you're struggling, they'll help you, because they want to see Black students do well. We're all on each other's side. So I think that that's really important to kind of build those bonds and look for those people in those places who want to help you. Of course, people of all races want to help you, but I think specifically Black administrators and professors and things like that have like a special place in their heart for Black students. So if you really do kind of seek out those people, you will find somebody who either knows someone who knows someone who will help you, or who will help you themselves, or they will go and they will find somebody who knows somebody who will help you. They'll fight for you and they'll fight on your behalf.
Now tell me what it means to be a STEM major.
Yeah, so being a STEM major is hard. I think every major has its challenges. I think at my school specifically, STEM is difficult, especially, and I can speak specifically from like a pre-med experience. The pre-med culture at my school is quite cutthroat. It's definitely competitive, and so I think that being a STEM major sometimes is difficult in that, like, growing up in the environment that I did, like I told you, I went to Gateway. Having those Gateway kids, we all kind of relied on each other. Someone needed help with homework. We all grew up together, so we knew each other. We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. We were happy to help build each other up. So kind of to move into college, where like those people who were mostly like and also kind of the gateway program kind of did have kind of focus in STEM too. So it was part of that too. And my middle school was also, my junior high, sorry, was a STEM high school. So I've been kind of integrated in STEM for a while, but to kind of move into a STEM environment where like everybody's not wanting to help each other and not wanting to build each other up was kind of a transition for me. But I think it's also kind of important just to kind of build a safe space around you, like surround yourself with other STEM majors who do have your best interest in mind, who want to help you, who want to share, this cool internship they found that they're also applying for. But like, here's the link, like things like that, who want to help you, who want you to do as well as them, who, it's everybody, I think, always prioritizes themselves a little bit. Like people who are happy to also prioritize other people. It's so important because STEM is hard and you're going to need people to help you, to help build you up, people to communicate with, people who are taking difficult classes with you, things like that. I think it's so important to have that community. So it depends on the college and the school, the environment you're in, but I think that STEM a lot of times can be quite competitive just because people are ambitious and they want the best for themselves, and that's I think it's just important to kind of build that community around yourself. So my advice for anyone who is going to take a STEM class is kind of nervous about going into that, I would recommend just finding a friend in every class. It can be 1, it can be 10, but I mean, as long as you have like one person in the class, like some kind of community, a good genuine person who you can bounce ideas off of, you can kind of have each other's back with like homework and tests and studying, things like that. I think that community kind of makes the experience of being a STEM major just that much easier. And also you just kind of it's solidarity and struggle. We're all going through hard times, but like at least you have somebody there who's in the trenches with you.
Yeah. Tell me about your experiences as a Black STEM major in a predominantly white institution.
Yeah, so I do think that, and I think it's definitely, you can see the demographics changing where like there are definitely more Black students wanting to be STEM majors, which is is encouraging to see. I don't think historically Black people have necessarily been kind of let into those spaces to kind of see people looking more and more to be in those spaces is encouraging and motivating, if anything. It is kind of, I think sometimes there's a little bit of I don't know if I want to say malice, but there are some people who aren't particularly friendly to you, despite being in the same kind of situation as you, just because of the way you look. And those people I mean, STEM majors are difficult sometimes, but hello,
I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. STEM majors are difficult sometimes, but I think sometimes STEM majors who don't necessarily look like you can be a little extra difficult, especially because some people there, especially with kind of things that have happened with like affirmative action and things like that. Some people look at you like you're not supposed to be there, and especially again, like I said, in STEM, which is already in a cutthroat environment, when people look at you in a way like they don't want you to be there, like that can be especially like difficult. But I think that again, finding those good people who and usually it will be people who look like you, or people who are at least people of color who want to help you and help build you up. But yeah, I think that that's definitely a difficult thing to battle. Kind of people who don't know, who don't see you as like being worthy of being there, and especially not like in that environment where they also are in, kind of being up to the same standard as them. So that's a difficult thing to balance for sure. To kind of overcome. Yeah.
What are some of your coping strategies for your success in high school or even in college so far?
Yeah, so I think that during the kind of COVID, which was my sophomore year, it was a weird time where I had the opportunity to kind of spend time solidifying not only my like study habits, because I didn't have a teacher to help guide me through it anymore. I mean, obviously online, but like it wasn't physical. I couldn't ask questions the way I did. I couldn't be engaged in the same way I did. when we weren't virtual. I think that having that time kind of allowed me to solidify my methods of studying and self-care. Self-care is a very important thing to me, and especially being at a school. So in high school, I think that I practiced self-care kind of as an added bonus. I think there were some days where it was rough and I needed it, and then but then I think those days were definitely in the minority. And the ways I would do that, I love movies. I would cuddle up with some popcorn, watch a movie, whether or not it be a comfort movie or I have a long list of movies that I'm working my way through. So watching a movie that I like or that I've been meaning to watch, spending time with my family, things like that, are all things that I did throughout high school. And so then moving into college, I had kind of already solidified those things for myself. So they weren't like out of the ordinary practices. And being at a school where like I told you, the environment sometimes can be so draining and just so cutthroat. Sometimes, there are some periods where things are rougher and the good days are in the minority rather than the majority. And those are the times I think you really need to know yourself. And I think high school is a good time to kind of experiment with that, because like high school is, in the moment you'll feel like, oh, this is really, really rough. But as you look back, you're like, that was a good challenge for me. And then college, in the moment is rough, and it seems a lot rougher than high school. I'm still kind of in the midst of it, so I'll let you know when I get out how I feel. But it can be rough. And I think that if you kind of solidify those things for yourself, you'll in college, those practices will be second nature to you, and you'll know yourself. Because I think that's also a really important thing to do in high school and college, wherever you go, is to kind of to know yourself and know when you need a break. I think that in pre-med culture and business culture, all of it, hustle is just such a big thing, and people put expectations of themselves to be doing something all the time, and to be involved in something all the time, or to be studying for this all the time. And it gets to be so much. And you'll like end up and you'll realize you're completely drained, you're not yourself, and you'll realize, and you'll sit back wondering, like, where did I go wrong? How did I get to this point? Like, how I can't even like study for this, I can't focus anything. Like, you wonder, like, how to get yourself, like, you have to prioritize yourself in little bits. And practice self-care in little bits, so that when like a big moment comes, you're not fighting back all this pent-up stress and all this pent-up anxiety, all of that. I think that as at UPenn, everybody's a high achieving student, and so I think one of the best advices that I got personally when I was applying and just kind of getting ushered into becoming a freshman was like, they acknowledged, like, we know you're all high achieving students, and we know you're gonna want to rush out and do all the hardest classes and do a million different clubs and just join into everything. But I don't remember, and I can't remember who it was that said it, but the person said that they said, take time, because this is a big transition. Along the lines of this, they mentioned that it was a big transition, and like, you're living a completely different life than you were 6 months ago. You're becoming a different person. You're on your own. No one's going to do anything for you. Yeah, people want to help you, but your parents aren't here to tell you to do your homework, tell you to wake up, tell you to do this on time. You are in one of the biggest transitions of your life, and you're going to need time to kind of just take a second and stay, like, know your place, know where you are, acknowledge your surroundings, and things like that. So kind of like, as someone who was involved with a lot of things in high school, was taking the hardest classes, I had to take time and really understand, like, ground myself, be like, okay, I am in a completely different place. I'm far away from my family. I'm on my own. I have the opportunity to make my own decisions, and kind of just like ground yourself in that way. And I knew that, like, again, throughout high school, I knew myself. I kind of thought, like, this transition is a stressor in itself. I don't need to add 16,000 clubs like I did in high school onto this. So during fall semester, I kind of limited myself to maybe 2 or 3 clubs, maybe one somewhere between 1 to 3, we'll call it 2 clubs, kind of just to make sure that those things were added fun, added bonuses, just so I could find community and explore college in the way that I wanted to, but also kind of like take time to like not be overcrowded with things, because there's 4 years for that to be busy. You're only a freshman your first semester once. You need to kind of take that time and kind of reflect, kind of set out a plan for how you want, because you kind of set the tone for your college experience. Obviously you can change habits and things like that, but you set the tone kind of for your college experience when you get there your freshman year, your first semester. So kind of setting in good habits, good study habits, developing those things like that. And I just kind of felt like for myself, having a bunch of clubs wouldn't allow me to kind of solidify those things that I knew would be things that I would need to rely on throughout my entire schooling career. So I kind of took time, didn't overbook myself, and took time to really just, my schedule wasn't too hectic. I just kind of took time to really adjust to the place that I was in. And then second semester, I picked it up. I joined the clubs I wanted to join. I kind of brought in everything. But I think taking that first semester for yourself is also another, like I said, another form of self-care, kind of making sure that you are acknowledging where you are and kind of grounding yourself before you go on for the other 8 semesters or 7 semesters that you have to do.
Now, can you talk about the people outside of your school experiences who contributed to your mathematical identity or your mathematics success?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier, kind of that gateway program really got me into math and to learning math. And this kind of flooded different domains of my life. And that I started thinking differently.
This gateway was within your school, though.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yes. I want to hear. I want you to talk more about, like, people outside of your school experiences that also contributed to your math identity or your math success.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So I think that outside of my schooling experience, people that contributed to my math success would be, I have an aunt who is a math professor, who was a math professor, and she was always there to help me whenever I needed help with math, and I needed that kind of extra help on a problem, or whether it was, and she explained it just so eloquently in a way that like made sense to me. And so that was really, I always knew that I had someone in my corner to rely on if I had a really, really tough problem that I needed to solve. That really helped also to kind of see, I think, like a Black person kind of go and have such a passion for mathematics and kind of have such a deep, thorough understanding of mathematics was so inspiring. Just to kind of see someone go that far in like mathematics, something that I deemed to be difficult for me, just to have like someone to look up to and kind of be inspired by in math. Remind myself that math is for me, and I can do math. Everybody can do math, and that. And then also I think also I have an older brother, who over the years has probably helped me do a million math problems when I was struggling, whether it be second grade multiplication or calculus in high school. He was a little begrudgingly, but he was always happy to help out. And he, and he's extremely intelligent, and he was patient with me, which I appreciated. He was happy to kind of, I'm sure that he's only a couple of years older than me. I'm sure he had learned in a certain way, but sometimes when he would teach it to me, the things he would teach it to me, I wouldn't understand it that way. So, and he would go the extra mile in kind of trying to teach to me another way, which I always found I always appreciated like so deeply, because not only is he going out of the way that he learned, or not only, but he was kind of like transitioned out of the way that he learned it, the way he understood it, to kind of make it in a way that I could understand it, which was really important to me. And I think that kind of has also kind of contributed to in my math identity. When I'm teaching other people math, when I'm helping someone with math, I also aim and strive to have that kind of flexibility in being able to, try first to convey it in the way that I understand it, but then try to see it from another perspective and convey it to them that way. I think is also important, like that kind of flexibility and understanding. So, which is why I think I kind of place such a premium on understanding the math that I know at its core, so that I have the ability to kind of explain it in a multitude of ways and not just in one kind of stagnant way. So yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious about your experiences outside of school that contributed to your math identity or your math success.
Yeah. Do you think you could clarify that question just a little bit?
So before we talked about people outside your school, right, that contributed to your identity. And now I'm curious about experiences outside of school that contributed to this success of your math identity.
Oh, okay, yes. So I think in terms of experiences, so I don't know that I've had a lot of explicit math experiences outside of like the classwork setting, but I think more so it's like the usage of math in outside settings instead that's kind of contributed to my math identity in that way. As I said, I think that math and science are quite closely related, and I have like a pretty big fascination with like data and like data that like that data that it has to do with people. And so I think that one really recent experience actually that I can kind of draw on, where math and data were such an important kind of important part of my kind of experience. Recently, I was interning. Excuse me. I was interning with a company. It was a business, kind of a nonprofit in Africa. They kind of work on making environmental solutions for companies. So they kind of aid companies in being more environmentally conscious. And so my specific team was customer acquisition. And so I think that I had a lot of my time was spent analyzing data of like past ventures, and not only of the company I was within, but other companies they were kind of aiming to partner with, kind of looking at past data and kind of having to analyze that in a way that would like set like a tone, or that would help the company kind of move forward in their way. So kind of using math in that way, the other way I understood it, I also think a lot of like the way I was understanding the data was I made a lot of graphs for them, whether that be like in Excel or whatever it was, kind of made a lot of graphs because that was kind of the way that I kind of understood the information that I was being asked to process. And I thought that was kind of clear and concise way. So kind of in the way that like in data and understanding data, interpreting data, presenting data in a palatable way to other people, I think that is one of the is a really, really important function of math, especially in like the career that I'm looking to go into. Kind of being able to understand and convey information. Math helps you do that because everybody learns math and it's kind of a universal language. And so to be able to convey ideas in that way, in a way that other people understand, is important. So to understand math within myself helps me be a better communicator of ideas and concepts and data that I'm tasked with communicating.
As a high achieving student, what helpful and or positive experiences did you have in college?
Yeah. So you said it cut out a little bit. You said positive and helpful experiences I had in
college. Yep.
In college. Yeah. So like I said, I go to a school where everybody's a high achieving student, but I think that in the sense that we were at least all high achieving students in high school, we all kind of are able to relate to each other and kind of relate to that culture. So at very least, I knew that the people around me kind of understood, like, sometimes in high school when when you say like, oh, I'm doing this and that, I'm not taking this and that, people kind of look at you a little funny. They're like, you have time to do all that? I'm like, no, I don't have time to do all that, but I'm doing it anyway. So kind of to be in an environment where, and sometimes it's a positive, sometimes it's a negative, but for the most part, I think being in an environment where people understand and people want to do the same kind of things you do and be motivated and passionate in the same way that you are it's honestly motivating. Like you see this person like grinding, this person got like 6 internships, like you're like, oh, like this person is someone that I can look up to. And rather than kind of go like the typical, not always typical, but it's kind of this, or I guess stereotypical, I would call it, kind of cutthroat, like, oh, like this person, like I'm jealous of this person. Kind of being in an environment where everybody's high achieving, you're bound to find somebody who wants to share what they did and kind of share how they got to where they are. So I think like being in this kind of environment, I think this college environment, I think that it's helpful to kind of, you have resources who aren't necessarily like people in places of authority, like they're your peers, they're people you talk to, people in your classes, people who also have connections. Like there's a kind of casual, I guess I would call it, factor to it, in that like you can really just walk up to anybody, ask them, or anybody, you're kind of like, oh, you've done this thing and I really admire that you've done that. Kind of, can you kind of walk me how you did it? How did you get this opportunity? What things did you do to kind of get to this place? And then also kind of having that like the four grades of college, like there are seniors in clubs and organizations that I'm involved with who are happy to share their experiences because they've been in the position that I've been in and they want other younger people to do well. So kind of just that environment where you can ask anybody anything, kind of everybody knows what you're going through. People want to see you, well, for the most part, people want to like share their experiences and share how they got to where they are. And so you can kind of like take that, kind of remix it and kind of apply it to your own life. Was really positive for me.
Now tell me about what you perceive or what you perceive to be your academic barriers as a high achieving Black college student.
Yeah, so I think that sometimes just kind of being well educated, I think, in the kind of ways and perceptions of Black students is like is a gift and a curse, because obviously it's a gift. You're better educated, you can better advocate for things, but knowing that kind of how other people can sometimes perceive you can be kind of frustrating, and sometimes you kind of set expectations of other people. So maybe you want to go out for a club, but you're like, will these people really want me to join their club? Is this like a place where like I will, like my entire identity will be accepted? I won't just be like a student who happens to go to this school. Like I will be a Black student and an African student who is in this, like, I think that knowing that kind of perception can kind of be a little bit of a roadblock. And I've mentioned multiple times in this time, kind of getting out of your own way. And I think that kind of feeling like and especially I think that a lot of times when people talk about going to college, medical school, things like that, they talk about imposter syndrome. And I think that is just kind of, it's honestly kind of just multiplied if when you're a Black student, because you're not only like, you feel like an imposter in the most profound way. And so also to just kind of come to a school where people have done all sorts of things. Like being at an Ivy League, like people have run and funded and are completely like established in the business world, especially like with Wharton. People here have seemingly lived 10 lives and are somehow still the same age as me. So kind of experiencing that in that way too, kind of that imposter syndrome, and then being a Black student on top of that is difficult. Um, I think that but as I mentioned earlier, I think that getting out of your own way is kind of the biggest thing you can do, because the worst thing that somebody can say to you is no. And after that, you get up and you go on and you move on with your life. So kind of putting yourself out there. I also think that this doesn't necessarily pertain to being Black, but I think that like something I didn't realize in high school that happened in college, or maybe this is just my specific college, but clubs to me in high school, you just kind of walked in, they're happy to see you, and then you go about your day. You join the club and you go to the meetings, and you conduct yourself that way. Whereas in college, at least again for my school, I can speak for my school, but a lot of clubs and things like, and really any extracurricular opportunity you want to go for, it's like an application and an application process, which I didn't really realize. And so that adds in that kind of added factor of, rejection. Like walking into high school, like there was no chance that like if anyone was gonna reject somebody, it would be me. Like, oh, I don't really like the vibes of this club, whatever. Like it was never like, oh, I'm submitting an application to you and kind of bury myself to you and you're gonna say no. And then on top of that, also kind of having like to become like a person who like regularly does interviews, just to get into like, and it would be like the most mundane club, like just a normal whatever club. Like it's such a culture of like like everything you do is like you take time, you get interviewed, and then like examine yourself as a whole. And I think that's a really big transition. That was a really, really big transition for me. I was honestly shocked when I found out. And so kind of having to put yourself out there, and then also have like not just put yourself out there, but put yourself out there with that kind of fear of rejection is like, it's a big thing. And so I think kind of, like I said, getting out of my own way, realizing really and truly the worst thing that can happen to me is like, no, it's okay. That's fine. And then you move on and go to the next club, find an opportunity that probably would have fit you better anyways. Like I think that and just kind of letting things kind of again, it's like and I should have mentioned this last question, but I think also high achieving students have a tendency to kind of let things weigh them down. Because you're high achieving, you want to get that A every time. You want to get in that club every time, like because historically that's what you've done. And so to come to college and just kind of like be kind of knocked just back and forth, like just thing after thing happening, and like you take a test and you see your first like score, and you're like, oh, that's not what happened in high school, and realize that you're gonna have to grow and adjust with how you with how you learn and how you do things. And just kind of realizing that like you can't let every single thing that happens to you kind of just stop you in your tracks. Not every single thing that happens to you can be debilitating. Like sometimes you just have to, when things happen, you just have to let them roll off your back and go on to the next thing. Which is, it's a learning curve, but I think that once you kind of master that, you're at a lot. You find like a sense of peace within yourself, where like that kind of helped me kind of get out of my own way. Like I just realized like everything that happens is not going to work out perfectly in my favor, and that's okay. I'll be on to the next thing, and then I'll eventually find the match for me. So things like that, kind of just letting things roll off you, and just kind of let bygones be bygones. Just pushing forward is important.
I agree. Now, my last question for you is, what kind of advice would you give to an incoming freshman, specifically an incoming first-year Black college student in STEM education?
And sorry, just to clarify, would this be like in terms of like applying or just kind of
Any
experiencing
advice,
college?
any advice you would give a first-year Black student who is in starting their journey in STEM?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of applying, I think that really taking time before you even start your application or before you even like, write anything, kind of taking time, because I think a lot of applications have a really big emphasis on the self. And if you haven't taken time to reflect on who you are, what goals you have, and you don't have to like know your major or know what you want to do in life to know these things, kind of know who you are, kind of know what things interest you, know what passions you have, know what passions you don't have. Knowing yourself in that way is important, because when you know yourself, you'll be able to show yourself. So kind of knowing yourself, like how can you communicate to a college admissions officer who you are as a human being in 600 words if you yourself don't know who you are? So I think that taking that time to reflect on your goals, ambitions, and just who you are as a human being is so important, and they help you tell a much more interesting story. And then also, I think one thing also about applying, my dad used to always say, show don't tell. Where like you don't need your application to be a resume. I'm sure you'll have some kind of resume or something like that to show your achievements elsewhere. So don't like use your, whether it's a supplemental essay or whether it's your Common App essay or things like that. Don't use that time to tell people what you've done because they know what you've done. Use that time to show what you've learned from those things, show what those things have meant to you, show how those things have helped you grow as a human being, and just things like that. In terms of being a Black student coming into college, as I mentioned before, community is just so important. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have my friends. And I think I could be mistaken, but I think a lot of colleges do have that kind of pre-orientation application, pre-orientation applications where you have the opportunity to kind of go to school before you go to school. I did two of those. I did the Africana one I was mentioning, and then I also did another one called Pinnacle, where I met a completely different group of students. Not all of them were Black. I met students who were in different schools, students who had different interests. I met such a diverse group of students, and they were like my family. And it was just so nice that to walk on to campus that very first actual school day, and then not be worried about, oh, no one's going to say hi to me. I'm not going to know anyone. I'm not going to sit next to anyone, because you already have established some friendships. And so you're walking along campus, nervous maybe about your first day, and then you see that friendly face. And that's just so important, brightens your day. You feel like at peace. You have people who are there rooting for you, especially when you're far away from home. You have people who are your cheerleaders nearby, and I think that's just so important. And then finding community in other ways too, joining clubs, maybe some cultural clubs. I think cultural clubs are really big, just to kind of stay in touch with your culture. Especially, I know at home I had like a lot of like, just inherently like was surrounded by surrounded by a big Black community. My church had mostly Black people. My school, like I was friends with most of my students. My closest friends were, a majority of them were Black. So I think that having that kind of, in college, it's not necessarily as like inherent. Like your parents don't get to make your friends for you. So you have to kind of go out and seek those people, because I think staying in touch and keeping that kind of community that you had previously is important. But then also kind of putting yourself out there in other ways, like finding clubs that interest you, and honestly using clubs not just as like a resume builder, but honestly finding a way, using clubs as a way to kind of exercise your passions, because school gets tough, and when you're forced to go to a club meeting after a 10-hour day, you're going to want it to be something that you're interested in and not something that you're doing to make an application look good. And absolutely. I think that when you enjoy things, you can do a better job. If you're on an application and for post-grad or something you're doing after graduate school, and they ask you about a club, you're going to be able to tell a much better story if you were genuinely passionate about something than if you were going on it just to be like, oh, I was in so-and-so club. And then also the thing I mentioned about knowing yourself, taking time to know yourself before, you have to know your limits. You have to know, because if you know your limits, you're a better advocate for yourself. Sometimes my friends will be like, hey, let's go do this thing. Let's do this. And I think like I'm sometimes you have to learn to be honest with yourself. I like some people sometimes my friends will ask me like let's go do this thing, and I know full and well it's Saturday night and on Monday I have a final. Like it's not time, and I know myself and I know it's not time for me to do those things. So you prioritize yourself and you advocate for yourself. Like not this weekend, maybe next weekend we'll do something else. Making sure you know you and you do what's best for you is important, and kind of setting boundaries with the people that are around you. My roommates. I first of all, I inform. I make sure they know when I have a test, know when I have a big thing coming up, and just kind of set boundaries. Make sure like I'm not gonna go do this thing with you this weekend. I have things to do, and being firm on those boundaries. So kind of practicing that as you're in high school, like setting boundaries and making sure you adhere to them is also important. And then, ask for help when you need it. It's college is a big place, but everybody who's in the college who helps kind of the college run, whether that be administrators, teachers, whatever, they all have people. They've all been to college. They know, or they've been in high school. They know how bad it is, how hard it can be to be a freshman. They understand. They know you're probably struggling. They want to help you. And even at any age, at any state you are, I still ask for help. I ask for help all the time. If you don't understand a concept, go to a teacher's office hours. And I think that also like this is quite a specific example, but I think that people like put a big emphasis on like, oh, like the first day of class, go meet the teacher. I do think that's I think that the principle itself is good, but if you don't feel comfortable that first day of class, you're not ready to go meet the teacher, that's fine. Go to their office hours later on, get a more one-on-one conversation. But make sure you kind of introduce yourself to them and kind of let them know kind of how you're doing in the class, how you're finding things in the class, before trouble comes. Because if you haven't kind of established that relationship, it just, you can't just show up one day and be like, oh, can you bump my grade? Like I have, and this professor has never seen you before. They're probably not going to help you out. And I also think that if you really build and try to build like genuine connections with professors, they enjoy having undergraduates, especially like in the STEM field. If you want to do like work in a lab, they enjoy having students work in their lab, undergraduates that they know and appreciate and have taken class with. They know you have like you're a hardworking student. So kind of make sure you build those kind of important relationships, because these will be the people who help guide you, who help write letters of recommendation, and you want them to really genuinely know you. And also just knowing people opens just so many doors for you. So really try to know as many people as you can while still building genuine connections. That's also just such an important part of college.
Absolutely. And I love the advice of always seeking help and building connections with your teachers and professors. Now, Kailey, I want to extend a huge thank you to you for spending some time with me, telling me about your experiences, sharing your story as you have transitioned from high school through college. I want to wish you all the best through your program as a neuroscientist. And thank you so much for being here and telling us your story. Is there anything you want to ask me?
I don't have any questions at this time, but thank you to the Kente Academy for just interviewing me and allowing me to use this platform to kind of advocate for or give advice to any students out there who might be kind of stressed about going to college, or who just need some advice, or just want to hear some stories about what's happened to me in college. So yeah.
Thank you so much.